It's not very often that a TV show moves past the rumour stage, but still finds itself a concrete confirmation. But Ryan Coogler's possibly upcoming The X-Files reboot seems to be exactly that. Hulu ordered a pilot in February 2026, and one of the first confirmed castings to happen was that of Danielle Deadwyler, and it did not take even a month for Himesh Patel to join her. And just a few days ago, that's the end of June, Himesh Patel confirmed that the pilot had finished filming and was nearly completing its post-production stage. And this time around, there would be two absolutely new characters who would be wearing the shoes left behind by Mulder and Scully. But they won't exactly be Mulder and Scully. Clearly, this is some real progress that the X-Files reboot is seeing for itself. And although there's a lot of reasons for X-Files fans to be excited about, as I will explain in just a bit, I must remind you that at the end of the day, a pilot is not the same thing as an entire season, or maybe two. And in this video, we are going to explore everything there's to explore about the TV show. And rest assured, I will tell you everything I know from the latest updates. So let's begin, shall we?
These aren't humans, Scully. From the look of it, I'd say they were aliens.
Why should you wait for this reboot? See, this project is definitely much bigger than an average legacy reboot. And at least for me, the reason is the person who's bringing it all together. The man, the myth, the legend we know as Ryan Coogler, who has definitely found his place among the Nolans and the Tarantinos. Given his recent success with several movies, including the surprise hit Sinners, Coogler can do literally anything he wishes to, and he now wishes to reboot X-Files. And I'm sure he has some awesome new ideas, some awesome new lore to add to the franchise without diluting what made the original so great. Coogler is not some safe bet for Disney, and we know that. But more importantly, he has talked about the original show as something he watched with his mother, and in the director's own words, X-Files is one of the most beautiful American television shows ever made, and said he wants to do right by both his mum and longtime fans like her. Now, I won't go as far as to say that there's some emotional weight behind it, but it does sound like he has a bit of a personal stake here, and more often than not, that's the difference that makes or breaks TV shows, especially those that are not new concepts. The franchise itself enjoys a great deal of attention. The X-Files ran from 1993 to 2002, returned for revival seasons in 2016 and 2018, and produced 2 feature films along the way. So Coogler rebooting the IP essentially means that he would be rebooting the whole thing, each and every installment, and it's all going to start from scratch. Needless to say, X-Files is one of TV's most recognizable sci-fi brands, and every new version has to deal with the risk of getting overshadowed by the original Mulder and Scully, the cigarette smoke and government secrets, and all those great cases which proved that there was more to the world than met the eye. One man is the link between the original and the reboot. Well, while we do not know if Gillian Anderson, David Duchovny, or any of those old guards would reprise their roles, in the reboot, there's one very important person from the OG show who is still connected to the reboot, and he's the one who first broke the news. You see, the first public sign of Coogler's take on X-Files can be credited to Chris Carter, the original show's showrunner and creator, who, back in 2023, confirmed that the X-Files reboot was officially happening. Carter said Coogler was going to remount the X-Files with a quote-unquote diverse cast, which very naturally and very instantly sparked equal parts curiosity and some fear from fans. Basically, given the kind of reboots we get these days, it's safer to brace for impact than to be sorry later on. A year later, Carter said that he would be involved only as a cheerleader and added that Coogler had good ideas. But yeah, Chris Carter is also going to serve as the show's executive producer, so you can rest assured that some of the original show's vibe will be retained in Coogler's take. But yeah, Carter basically slipped up in a podcast about the reboot, and it was only after that Disney and Coogler were also forced to confirm the same. But yeah, it was not a feud or anything. If anything, Carter sounded respectful and was fully aware that someone else was now going to drive the show. Coogler, for his part, knows exactly how delicate this thing is. He said he'd been excited about it for a long time, and he also promised that if the team does its job right, some episodes will be really scary, and I guess we can work with that, yeah? I mean, it does sound like the correct instinct to have. What I mean is that the X-Files wasn't as good as it was only because of the lore. Like, there were other important aspects, such as how it makes scary things like a dark hallway, an autopsy table, or a quiet patch of woods way scarier. So much so that the experience continued to stay with you days on end, and Coogler seems to know that he needs to pay as much attention to the atmosphere as he must to the story.
Ropes.
Story details and what the reboot actually seems to be. Not much has been revealed about the reboot story, but the official and initial synopsis is on the same lines as the previous iterations, and it says that 2 highly decorated but vastly different FBI agents form an unlikely bond when they are assigned to a long-shuttered division devoted to cases involving unexplained phenomena. Now this effectively means that the core architecture of the original is going to remain intact, and I'm sure that there still would be the good old believer versus skeptic trope and the tensions this trope brought. And knowing Coogler, he likes to play with a super diverse cast. Take Sinners for instance, and the same can be expected here. But who would be playing Mulder and Scully? Well, it seems that we already have winners. So in an interview, Himesh Patel, who plays Dr. Watson in the Enola Holmes movies, said that while he did not want to say anything that would get him disappeared, he did confirm that he and Danielle Deadwyler are completely new characters. Like, these are the two vastly different FBI agents that the official description was talking about. They aren't exactly Mulder and Scully, simply inspired by those two, which by extension means that Ryan Coogler understands that such legendary characters cannot simply be replaced by other actors, and this also leaves the possibility for them to return very, very open, even if they return for a small cameo as maybe mentors to the characters of Patel and Deadwyler. Patel also confirmed that they had just wrapped on the pilot, which is pretty huge. I mean, given Coogler's expertise, chances are the pilot will transform into an order for an entire season. As for the style of the show, Coogler has said the reboot will keep both the standalone case format and the larger conspiracy thing. In his own words, it wouldn't be X-Files if we didn't do both. This is also great news, mostly because the old show lived and breathed on this very rhythm, much like many modern horror shows. Say Hannibal for instance. God, I miss Hannibal. But anyway, if and when the X-Files reboot happens, one week you'd get a scary or weird creature feature, and the next you'd be getting maybe government cover-ups, etc. So yeah, Ryan Coogler's X-Files is going to be a structural reboot rather than a direct continuation, and I'm glad that Patel and Deadwyler are going to play new characters instead of simply playing Mulder and Scully. Like, that would have opened another Pandora's box. I'm talking about people who take serious offense when a character's race is changed from one to another. And as far as the plot, etc. are concerned, one more thing that caught my attention are the words highly decorated in the official description. So if I'm not wrong, Mulder and Scully in the original often felt like outsiders inside the FBI, but these new agents may begin with stronger credentials and more institutional respect. But maybe they mess up somehow and end up in the corner of J. Edgar Hoover building that no one wants to visit.
Tell you when I find out what's on it. Now just tell me who I can talk to about breaking that code.
Cast so far and what each major update tells us. As I mentioned already, the two confirmed leads are Danielle Deadwyler and Himesh Patel, who would be playing the lead FBI agents in the same lines as Mulder and Scully. Deadwyler was announced first when Hulu ordered the pilot, and Patel joined in March 2026 as her co-lead. And yeah, both these actors have the capacity of playing intelligence, restraint, and moral tension on the screen, all the while not trying too hard. Patel and Deadwyler previously worked together on Station 11, so there's got to be some chemistry between the two. But apart from these two, we do have some information about other guest actors and characters as well. In the guest roster, we got Amy Madigan, Steve Buscemi, Ben Foster, Devery Jacobs, Lachlan Monroe, Tantu Cardinal, Joel Demon Grand, and Sophia Grace Clifton. None of their character names have been announced, so there is no way to tell which one's going to be a villain and which a victim. Some of these could even be people working with the FBI, and some may be one-episode freak event survivors. But yeah, the lineup does seem strong, and as I mentioned earlier, the original stars are still a giant question mark. Gillian Anderson has been the most encouraging voice on that front, and she said that she and Coogler had quote-unquote a few conversations. She called Coogler a talented person and also expressed that the pilot script is quote-unquote really good, and urged fans to keep an open mind because the reboot is going to be different and special. Now that's about as encouraging as she could be without revealing if she was going to reprise her role in the new show. David Duchovny has been more cautious though. He said he had not read the script and did not know what the reboot was about, but he still described Coogler as super talented. He also said the original frame Carter created was kind of eternal because the believer-non-believer dynamic can keep renewing itself. At the same time, he admitted rebooting this show is a hard job, which is fair, especially with all the comparisons that people are gonna draw between the reboot and the original. But yeah, if you asked me, I think these two will reprise their roles if the reboot takes off. Maybe not in the first season itself, or maybe at the end of the first season or something, but it would be really strange if Gillian and Duchovny did not even return for cameos. But no matter what I think or say, there's only one way to find out. We gotta wait. The people behind the scenes seem to be more important than the cast. I think enough has been said about Coogler, so let's talk about the showrunner, who by the way is not going to be Ryan Coogler. Yeah, So the showrunner is Jennifer Yale, who also serves as an executive producer. She has worked in IPs including but not limited to Legion, Outlander, See, Your Friends, and Neighbours, and the Copenhagen Test. That is a pretty useful CV for something like The X-Files, because this series needs somebody who can handle mood, handle serialized mystery along with character tension, and the occasional total jog to the south story-wise. But that's not all. The rest of the production team is also pretty interesting. As mentioned earlier, Chris Carter is back as an executive producer, but he says he won't be meddling with the creative process, and would just be Coogler and the team's cheerleader, which is something I absolutely respect, because the man has passed on the baton to the younger generation. Proximity Media partners Sev Ohanian and Zinzi Coogler are executive producers too, with Simone Harris attached as co-executive producer. The reboot will happen through Onyx Collective and 20th Television under Coogler's larger television deal with Disney. Additionally, there are two behind-the-scenes names that should get genre fans excited. First, Francine Maisler is handling casting for the pilot. As a casting director, she has worked on some great movies like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies, Creed, Baby Driver, Dune Parts 1 and 2, The Revenant, and like so many others. In fact, she was also nominated for the Best Casting Director category at the 98th Academy Awards for Sinners. Second, Coogler has brought in Autumn Durald Archipel, the cinematographer from Sinners. Between Coogler's horror lean and Archipel's eye, the reboot has a real chance to look distinct and yet as good as the original X-Files. Then there is the Vince Gilligan piece, who wrote several of the original X-Files before making Breaking Bad. Coogler said Gilligan gave him a couple of hours of advice over Zoom, answered his questions, and that he keeps those notes in a notebook he goes back to often. That is such a reassuring thing, because Gilligan understands the X-Files in and out, and it's so great to see that Ryan Coogler is taking notes and pieces of advice from those senior to him. Finally, the pilot was apparently shot in Vancouver under the working title of Alphabet Soup. Vancouver will provide the pilot with the moody and atmospheric setting that it provided to the 90s show before it moved to Los Angeles. So yeah, to sum all this up, it seems that Coogler understands that the tone of X-Files lives in places it is set in as much as the plot.
Absolutely, Your Honor. I'm not guilty.
Release date, and the latest update that changes the conversation. Now this is the slightly disheartening part, because we do not really have a proper release date for the reboot. Like, we know that the pilot is ready or almost ready, and now the next part would be the higher ups watching it. Maybe they show it to a test audience and see the collective reactions. Then there would be the question of money, like how much would it cost to order an entire season or 8 or 10 episodes, and what kind of money they could make from that. But either way, I think if the pilot gets approved in the next 2 or 3 months and principal photography begins by the end of this year, it would be fair to say that the principal photography takes another year or so to get done, which already brings the timeline to nearly the first quarter of 2028. And then there would be a lot of post-production to be done, followed by some marketing. So, if I were to guess, the X-Files reboot would not release any time before the third quarter of 2028. Maybe they release it during Halloween that year, who knows? So in order to conclude the video, let's take our final question.
I saw him this morning down by the river. He was eating a fish.
What kind of X-Files are we actually getting? Well, no one really knows the exact answer to that question, at least nobody that's outside the production circle. But based on whatever I learned while researching for this video, I think I can say that this reboot is definitely not going to be a cameo parade, and won't even depend on nostalgia for its success. But having said that, Coogler is also not gonna make it a cynical, wipe the slate clean kind of remake that has zero respect for the original. So in other words, while there would remain the same fundamental engine, we'll be seeing new agents, new cases, room for old ghosts if the story earns them, and maybe another star like Bryan Cranston, and another future show like Breaking Bad would sprout out of the reboot. Yeah, I am not kidding. So Vince Gilligan actually remembered Bryan Cranston from his X-Files days, and that's how he cast him in Breaking Bad. Had Bryan Cranston not played that messed up guy in one of the X-Files episodes, there's a high possibility of us seeing someone else in Breaking Bad. But anyway, I'm glad that the show is going with completely new characters as it leads, and Coogler is insisting on both mythology and standalone cases. Plus his talks with Anderson and his consultation with Gilligan are telling me that the man knows how important the old show's beats are, and he would not want to compromise in that arena. So yeah folks, that was pretty much it in this one. If you liked the video, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these awesome videos. Stay safe and have a good one.